What if Tank Davis, who can punch, who is a hell of a fighter, who is a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, what if he lands a punch on this bigger guy's chin, right, who's not a professional fighter? What happens?
But if they do it for real, Tank is highly capable of taking Jake Paul out. So the exhibitions that I like to see are ones that either I can mythically look at and say, wow, well, if he would have did that back when he was 10 years younger or 8 years or 12 years ago, he would have beat him. You understand me? Because we know boxing.
Which if he hits you because he's so accurate, he's gonna drop you or could put you to sleep. But like not necessarily power punch. Like Edwin De Los Santos is a hard hitter. He would even have a hard time with rollies. I'm not even kidding.
Boxing legends explain why Gervonta Davis will destroy Jake Paul in just 3 rounds. Gareth A. Davis says Gervonta stayed unusually quiet during the press conference and face-off, barely reacting to Jake's jokes about his height. He notes that Tank seemed hesitant, almost like he was pressured into this fight. But once the bell rings, Gareth believes Tank will unleash fast, powerful combinations that will silence Jake completely.
Went about the presser.
He reminded me of a northern football fan being dragged to a shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon rather than being allowed to go to his favourite Liverpool seat. You'll relate to that, won't you? It was almost like he'd been shackled and dragged there against his will. Even when they faced off, it was as if Jake Paul had a bad smell about him or something. He didn't want to get near Jake Paul. He didn't want to. I'm just going to plug this in as well. I just realised it's not plugged in. It was almost as if he didn't want to indulge anyone at all. Like he'd signed up against his will, and then. Like he'd been signed up against his will. The agents and his manager and his handler had dragged him there without briefing him on what was going on and where it would be and what time it would take place. And there was this oaf in his mind standing there in front of him, this big oaf who kept posturing, and it just didn't do anything to him. I wondered at one point whether he was going to burst out with a combination of punches or something and just drop Jake Paul, who was being, measuring him up and going down to his height, and it was all very peculiar in my view. Like he really wasn't taking it seriously.
Ryan Garcia doesn't hide his frustration over the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis fight. He calls it a complete insult to boxing, pointing out the unfair size and weight difference between the two. To Ryan, this isn't a real contest but a show created to attract attention, not respect. He says boxing should be about skill, legacy, and fair competition, not social media stunts. Watching a smaller fighter like Gervonta face a naturally bigger man like Jake feels wrong to him, especially when it's promoted as competitive. Ryan believes the fight sends the wrong message to young boxers that hype and money matter more than discipline and respect. For him, this isn't entertainment. It's a mockery of the sport he loves.
Mainly Jake's end. We're not falling for the Disney Channel bit no more. We're not falling for you're not a fighter no more. We're not falling for that. You're ranked as a cruiserweight and you're out here trying to fight a lightweight. And then on top of it, you were just talking about fighting Anthony Joshua. That doesn't make no sense. And, I just felt like it was a disgrace to boxing and kind of it was not a good move by Jake Paul. I understand people saying, Gervonta got to go get his money, blah, blah, blah. But, we're not talking about that shit. We're talking about the sport, bro. We're not talking about, oh, you got to get that money, bro. Yeah, but everybody's open to criticism. That's the whole point of this media shit. That's why they talk about basketball players. They don't talk about, well, LeBron's making too much. Nobody cares, bro. If LeBron's missing the shot, he's missing the fucking shot. So at the end of the day, bro, I just thought it was a disgrace to the sport. Because on one end, you got the casuals, right? The casuals don't see the weight difference. They see Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Yeah. And if Gervonta Davis doesn't fuck up Jake Paul, they're going to think Jake Paul is some pound-for-pound champion type of fighter. Yeah. And to me, that's just it's tricking the public, and it's kind of bullshit, bro, at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, if Gervonta was Jake Paul's size, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There probably wouldn't even be a fight. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I just think that it's a disgrace to boxing.
Well, well, we got to play devil's advocate because people were saying, well, Ryan, you called out Jake Paul before too, so how would you say that? What do you have to say to the people that were saying that to you?
Well, I'm way bigger than Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis is 5'4", and his last fight was at 133. My last fight was 147, and I walk around 170. So, I mean, 170 to 190, whatever, however big is not too much difference. But you got Gervonta Davis, he's actually really small. Like, when I fought him, like, he's small.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a very unfair fight. Nobody was complaining when Jake Paul was fighting Julio Cesar Chavez.
Right.
Nobody was complaining when he was fighting Anthony Joshua. And I still think Jake Paul's a cool dude. But shit, he's calling me out on my shit. I'm gonna call him out on his shit, bro. That's a fucking disgrace of a fight.
Yeah.
You know it. Just like the Mike Tyson low key was a disgrace, but we accepted it. But he was 60 years old. I mean,
right.
What the fuck are we talking about
60.
here?
That's crazy.
Sean Porter views this matchup from a veteran's perspective, seeing it as proof of how boxing has changed. He says today's fighters chase fast money instead of long-term greatness. In his opinion, Gervonta Davis has joined that group, choosing cash over legacy fights. Porter recalls when legends used to risk their records to achieve greatness, but now, fighters focus on brand deals, social media fame, and quick paydays. He believes Tank is one of the most talented boxers alive, but is wasting his prime on sideshow fights instead of meaningful challenges. Porter says the problem isn't just Tank, it's a growing trend of money-driven fights that are slowly destroying boxing's true spirit.
But why are you doing that? How do you sort of see this scenario now for him?
Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it, what to really say about it. I've only been asked this when it's presented to me. That's when I think about it, and I can't really come up with a good answer for it. In a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense to me. Of course, we know the size differential, and the list goes on from there. I don't know, man. I think we're entering a generation now, or a phase now where fighters, I don't know if it's fighters, I don't know if he doesn't care about the legacy, or if he feels like this fight doesn't matter, I'll get back to the legacy. I just don't know. This is truly it's not a legacy fight, but of course it is a generational money fight, so.
Many analysts say the issue isn't only with the fighters, it's also with the audience. They argue that modern fans feed the circus. Real technical fights between skilled boxers often get ignored, while influencer matches grab all the headlines. They blame social media's short attention span for turning boxing from a sport into drama. According to them, the Jake Paul phenomenon isn't entirely his fault, it's the fans rewarding chaos instead of craft. When people tune in only for trash talk and viral moments, serious boxers lose motivation to take real risks for respect. Analysts warn that fans have blurred the line between sport and spectacle. Real fighters compete for titles, influencers compete for clicks, and as long as people keep paying for these shows, entertainment will keep winning over authenticity.
Boxing has evolved to where it's at. I'll expand on that. For one, you have good fights where I'm not talking about these type of fights, crossover type of fight, former Disney guy, influencer stuff. Not. And Jake Paul has really promoted himself and acquitted himself to the point where he's kind of a boxer. Now, he hasn't fought the top names. I get it, blah, blah, blah. But he's doing his thing. He's training like a boxer. He's not like taking it lightly, like streaming and then working on his YouTube more than he's working on his boxing. It is what it is, right? But beyond that, let's keep it going. I told you I'm about to really get unpacked. Subscribe to the channel. The reality is, the reason why I'm saying I blame you, the fans, is because we've had some very good fights, like David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, whatever. I'm talking in the last 5-10 years, right? Very good fights, all boxing. So not talking influencer or any type of crossover fight, right? Good fights. And then you got boxing fans in a niche sport who didn't further the exposure by advertising or buying the fight, mostly buying the fight with piracy and whatnot. So now we're at a point in this society where these companies, they're like, all right, they see the piracy is a problem. Now they're looking for a sure shot, must win type of scenarios. That's why we're getting these fights that some people purists and diehards are calling wonky fights. You know what I mean? It is your fault.
One major concern shared by experts is the huge size difference between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Jake walks around at cruiserweight, while Tank's natural class is lightweight. Analysts say that even though Tank is more skilled, boxing physics still matter: reach, weight, and power can't be ignored. They warn that putting Tank against Jake in a sanctioned fight would be dangerous. Jake can take punches from bigger men and keep fighting, while Tank, despite his knockout power, would need to close the gap against a much taller, stronger opponent. Critics argue such mismatches should never be approved under normal boxing standards. On paper, Jake has the size advantage and Tank has the skill advantage, making the fight controversial. For traditionalists, it's another sign that boxing's rules are being bent for entertainment.
How do I even start to break down a Tank Davis versus Jake Paul fight? Tank, a massively powerful fighter at 135 pounds, but his punch output is among the lowest in the sport. Jake has a pretty decent punch output for a guy that's 200 pounds. He hits hard in his own right, but doesn't have the skill and capabilities anywhere close, or the feet, or the hand speed, or the eyes anywhere close to Tank Davis, but has a power that Tank Davis has probably never felt, but just because Jake is naturally 70 pounds bigger than him, right? So 10 rounds, 3 minutes, who starts to show the wear and tear first? I know if Tank touches him on the jaw, it's probably not going to feel like roses, regardless if he's 135 or 150 or whatever he steps in that night. He's still a Tank and has still put guys down as he's gone up in weight, but Jake is just so much bigger. How much will the power that Tank has at the lower weight classes affect?
Showbiz the Adult takes a closer look at Tank's legacy and how fragile it has become. He says Tank has already faced criticism for avoiding tough opponents, and this Jake Paul fight could make it worse. Showbiz points out that Lamont Roach's strong performance against Pitbull Cruz, Tank's toughest opponent, raises doubts about Tank's dominance. If Roach performs better against Cruz than Tank did, fans will start questioning Tank's greatness. Showbiz explains that in boxing, perception matters. If someone beats your best win more easily, your reputation suffers. He warns that while fighting Jake Paul may bring big money, it won't add value to Tank's career. Instead, it gives critics more reason to doubt his hunger for real competition and lasting legacy.
He's better than Tank. I don't even know how you cannot have him better than Tank. People question Tank's resume anyway. But if you make Tank take a knee and they don't call it a knockdown and you still get the draw, you beat him. You beat Tank. And then you dominate Pitbull, one of Tank's best wins. Bro, you better than him. The resume, listen, bro. I didn't say greater. I said better. The resume means politics. Ryan was just saying it. Lamont Roach could have been on a back burner and they were holding him back, so he had to go down to 130, doing the grunt work like Marvelous Marvin Hagler, waiting for his time to shine. Resume, if the business chooses you, they can move you along right. He actually get cherry picked and he best Tank, and then he stops Pitbull. He's better. Y'all know how the business of boxing works. You just saw Terrence Crawford actually be the best fighter we've seen in decades. The man, Terrence Crawford, can arguably be better than Floyd Mayweather. Y'all saw the business shit him for all of his career, practically all of his career. And you see that he's better than Nello? What a surprise. We've been seeing a guy coming from lightweight can beat Nello at super middleweight.
Lamont Roach adds more controversy by revealing the business conflict behind the scenes. He says Tank was supposed to take a rematch against a top contender but chose Jake Paul for the easy payday instead. Roach believes this shows Tank's priorities have shifted. It's no longer about proving himself, but about collecting quick money. He stresses that real fighters honor their contracts and their word, because boxing's integrity depends on it. Roach admits Tank has elite skills and killer instinct, but this decision questions his discipline. Many fans feel let down because the rematch could have given Tank the chance to silence critics who doubt his dominance.
Because if he did, even if this whole Jake situation was in the way, holler at me. Tell me you want to fight Jake. Tell me you got a bag coming up. All right, boom. Like,
go do
it's a way to handle that. We have a contract. You cannot breach a contract and think shit just gonna be sweet. You can't. You can't do that. Right. We have a contract. So it's not like this wasn't supposed to happen or whatever the case may be. And he just went and took the Jake route. We had a signed contract to fight. So him breaching the contract is, if y'all put yourself in my shoes, you gotta think, I'm looking forward to fighting and getting paid. I'm looking forward to fighting and winning so I could be two-time world champ. Me. I'm in training for a fight to be a champion in another weight class and for me to be crowned champion twice in my career. And this just go and then end up announcing another fight. Put yourself in my shoes.
Did you find out just like the rest of us did?
Kinda. So I was on the fence because they didn't announce. They was like, all right, we're going to announce. All right, we're going to announce. All right, they're going to announce. Every week. All right, we're going to announce the fight. We're going to announce the fight. I'm like, all right, they on the bullshit.
Max Kellerman takes a balanced view, recognizing Jake Paul's huge impact on boxing's business side. He says no current fighter sells tickets or grabs attention like Jake. That's why so many pros accept his offers, not because they respect his skill, but because they want his spotlight. Jake has become boxing's biggest marketing force, and even top champions want a share of his audience. Kellerman and Paulie Malignaggi also discuss whether Tank's knockout power will work against a much bigger man. They agree that Tank's explosiveness is elite, but question if his power will be enough to overcome the size gap.
Legitimately cannot get knockouts. I agree. He can punch, but there's a lot of limited knockout artists, though, man.
He's one of the least active punchers in the game with the highest knockout percentage of current heavyweight.
But if he was a real knockout artist, if he was a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best of the best. Felix Trinidad was a knockout artist. He was knocking out the best of the best. If you're a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best and show us how he smokes them. But the way
Paulie,
we did when Felix Trinidad was doing it. You know? The way they did it when Mike Tyson was doing it in his prime. Say what you want about the Mike Tyson era. He knocked out everyone from 1986 to 1989. Everyone got knocked out. Everyone.
Well, by your standard, you could say that Tyson was, to a degree, manufactured.
No, because he fought everyone that was there. Everyone that was there at that time fought.
Teddy Ellis will 100% agree with this.
With the expense of
Witherspoon. That were afraid of him.
With the exception of Witherspoon. No, but they all, doesn't matter. He knocked them all out. There was nobody you could say in that era except maybe Witherspoon, who had contract issues with King at the time. Except for Witherspoon, there is nobody Tyson didn't fight in that era. He knocked them all out.
Eddie Griffin ends the discussion with a sharp and cynical take. He says Jake Paul's fights aren't about real competition, but controlled entertainment. He calls them Hollywood fights, claiming results are designed to protect profits, not to test skill. Griffin points to the Mike Tyson exhibition as an example, saying Tyson could have ended it early, but didn't because it wasn't part of the deal. He believes the same could happen in the Tank fight, a show made for money, not rivalry. If Jake gets knocked out fast, the hype ends. If he lasts longer, the payday doubles. Griffin says both camps understand the financial stakes, which makes the fight feel more like acting than boxing. Still, he admits fans will tune in anyway, proving that controversy sells more than authenticity in today's boxing world.
I ain't even gonna call it a fight, because it ain't. If Jake Paul's involved in it, it's a great acting job. You know Mike Tyson could have just knocked Jake Paul's face into the canvas, but he got paid to pull punches, otherwise he wouldn't have got paid. I'm pretty sure the same is going for Gervonta Davis. It's a quick money grab. Man, most of y'all gonna be suckers who tune in. It's just quick money grab. That's all I'm saying. Ain't gonna be no fight. I don't give a fuck how big Jake Paul is. He can't take one of them little mother tank punches. Yeah, tank move furniture. Move furniture. Catch that motherfucking move furniture. And Jake don't like his furniture moved, so he gonna pay him not to hit him again. If you really want to show out Gervonta, sign a contract that you ain't gonna hit him, because if you hit him, you lose all the money. And then whoop that motherfucker's ass, put him to sleep, and get him out the boxing game once and for all. Let's go up here.